Is that true? Does publishing slow down in the summer significantly?
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'm busy throughout the year. I mean, and there are editors, especially in the US and UK, who, well, they don't take as long of summer vacation time as, I don't know, editors in Spain or France or other European countries. So you can be submitting things. Sometimes the summer is the best time to like submit a new project to a US or UK editor.
Gotcha. Well, I've always hearing conflicting reports. Some people tell me no, they take their long summers and just wait until they come back, and other people say nobody else is submitting because they all think they're on vacation, so it's the perfect time to get in there when the way is clear.
What's always true is that September is just manic. Like it's like, I don't know, from August, which is holiday time for most people, to like the first week of September, which is the opposite. It's the biggest, I think, kind of adjustment time for everybody in the year. So for that reason, I do try to slow down a bit in the summertime, just to kind of be prepared as much as possible for the really busy fall.
Well, this is great information. I think we should call this the start of the show. What is it about September that is the perfect confluence of events that keeps everybody so busy?
Um, well, it's the like returning from summer holidays, but it's also the run up to the Frankfurt Book Fair, which takes place in October. And so, especially if you're a foreign rights agent, which is what I used to be, you are really doing everything you can to kind of build up momentum and interest and deals for new projects as early as possible in September, so that you've got things that are kind of hot by the time Frankfurt is happening. So yeah, and everybody in international publishing really gets busy at the same time, or is like looking to acquire new projects at the same time, from September into October. It's also a time when the biggest books are published, like the sort of the biggest publications of the year, from the big publishers as well as small ones, are all coming out in September to October. So it's a very busy time with, I mean, on the other kind of end of the book, the life of a book, from the new projects that are just in their sort of, I don't know, early draft or idea form, hitting editors' inboxes, to the kind of most talked about books of the year, hitting the shops. There are also a lot of prizes, like the biggest prizes are in that period too. So it's a big time in every respect.
So if an author is querying in general, but querying you, are they better off trying to get in there in the summer, maybe no later than August, or are they better just waiting till December and beyond?
That's probably true. I think it's pretty much any time, like those crunch months of September, October, are probably the worst time to be querying. But then I think other time, like any other time, like from November, December, and into August, can be fine.
I know when I chatted with Mark Gottlieb, he mentioned that conventional wisdom is nobody does anything those weeks of Christmas and New Year's. And publishing goes to the others like that's my busiest time because I know there's all the competitions weeded out. If anybody checks their email, they're going to see me because everybody else is being respectful and polite and not sending emails at that time. Would you concur? Is that a good idea?
I think I used to think that was the case, but now, and maybe this has become more apparent like during the pandemic with more people, well, with everyone working from home, that period pretty much, especially for the US because of Thanksgiving, like in holiday time in November, it's I think a really counterproductive time to submit a new project, probably from mid-November until January, I would say. I mean, there are exceptions, like it's possible if it was like a new novel by an author that already is sort of in with a publisher, then it could be a good way of giving that editor the manuscript with the understanding that they could read it, take the time to read it from like November through December, and that you'd be talking to them and their team about it in January. But I think for things, I mean, by debut writers, it's not a very good time because everyone at the end of the year is just kind of trying to clear off their desk or clear out their inbox and, I don't know, focus on having time with their families. And it's also not, even if the editor that you submit something to is, I don't know, willing and able to take the time to read, then chances are the rest of their team is not. It's a hard time for people to put something through acquisitions or to get like other input on a project because maybe they're able to focus on it in November or December, but they probably won't be able to get their boss to do it as well, or the publicity marketing people. So you end up I don't know, starting from square one in January anyways.
Gotcha. So even if you get a hold of Ebenezer Scrooge, they've still got to wait for Bob Cratchit to come in. And I should mention, I'm probably only half remembering what Mark Gottlieb said. Esteemed audience, check the back catalog. It's a wonderful episode. He's got.
I just listened to most of it actually to sort of prepare myself for this one. And it was really interesting. I would say I'm probably pretty much the opposite kind of agent.
Well, wonderful. We'll get a whole spectrum of views. That'll be my guest today is Jessica Craig. I'm sorry, you were saying what I knew was vital information. I'm like, if I ask a million different ways, there's no way I'll get you to bring up this information about timing again. So we got to start now. That's too good. But I couldn't be thrilled that you were able to make time for us today. Esteemed audience knows that I never summarize anybody else's background because I'll just make a mess of it and you'll be sitting there and you'll know I'm wrong and we'll both know I'm wrong and it'll just be a bad start. So if you would give esteemed audience kind of an overview of your background and we'll go from there.
Well, I started in publishing right out of college in the mid 90s in New York City. When I graduated from Columbia, it's funny thinking back to that time because it was basically just before the internet like took over our lives, or especially job searching. But it was literally just uh, like an index card that I found like stapled onto a bulletin board in the jobs office, asking for someone to be an international literary scout, which was something I'd never heard of before, but it just sounded like the perfect job for me. And so that's how I started. And it was working for an agency so scouts represent international publishers and sometimes film companies as well, and report to the clients about the publishing scene and the books that are coming up as early in advance as possible, to advise them and position them to offer for the rights of like the hottest books every month. And it was, yeah, it's a very behind the scenes job. There are a lot of scouts nowadays in New York, in the US, in the UK. There are even scouts in like other foreign countries, like Spain, for instance. But back then there were kind of a small number in New York and similarly kind of small number in London or the UK. And it was an excellent way to learn the ropes of not just US publishing, but international publishing as well. Because you're having to read and kind of race to like get a hold of early drafts or like new manuscripts and proposals of fiction and nonfiction, and cultivating relationships with editors, with agents, to show them that you'd be a good person to have them send these things for you to read. And so I did that for almost a decade. And that was, really the foundation of, I guess, the rest of my career. And I was thinking that because I've always really been a very, I guess, close and passionate reader, I was envisioning I would probably want to be an editor someday, or as a next step. But this is actually something similar to what came up in your conversation with Mark, that once you sort of get to know agents or learn about the role that an agent plays, you realize that we're in an editorial role with authors as well, and in some cases even more so than some editors these days. So that's why, agenting became the thing that I wanted to do, and the easiest or the most natural kind of progression from being a scout to working in an agency is to become a foreign rights agent. So that was what I did after scouting. And I worked in a really extraordinary boutique agency in New York. Extraordinary because of the quality of the writers, and they were mostly debut writers, but people that have, especially in literary fiction, and some in journalism, have really gone on to have stellar careers. the agency was called Burns and Clegg. So it was Bill Clegg and Sarah Burns, who are both agents in different places now, but at that time they had formed this company. And I was, yeah, their foreign rights director. And that, yeah, showed me how much I love working closely with writers, with promoting especially new voices in who are writing, I don't know, really high quality of storytelling internationally, and yeah, finding books or really championing books that I could see would have appeal in, I don't know, several different languages. And it was, I guess, around, well, first of all, that agency sort of collapsed because the partners split up. And I had started actually wanting to leave New York and move to Europe. And that was accelerated, yeah, by suddenly needing to find a new job. And it was looking to the UK that I really focused on. And that's when I got the chance to move from New York to Edinburgh, Scotland, actually, which was a wonderful opportunity and kind of a dream come true, because I had already become really fascinated with Edinburgh, and in particular this great independent publisher called Canongate Books, which originated and has their headquarters in Edinburgh, although they have a London office, well, for many years now as well. And so that's the only time that I've ever actually worked in a publishing house. And that was really fascinating because it was such a very active independent publisher. So bigger than many, but still small enough so that everybody there worked really closely together and kind of wears different hats in a way. And I even acquired a novel like while I was there, even though I was the maternity cover foreign rights director. And yet when that role came to an end, because it was a maternity cover position, I knew that I didn't want to keep working on the publishing side, but I wanted to go back to the agency side. And I missed that kind of close connection with writers and their works. And so then I got a job in London at a really large agency as the foreign rights director. And it was, that was really interesting because I thought I had entered like the most, I don't know, permanent and established and kind of old-fashioned work environment that I had ever been in. And it was like one of the, oldest and most prestigious literary agencies of all, called PFD. But lo and behold, like within a few months of me landing there and starting up their first in-house foreign rights department, there was a management buyout that it was like headline news in publishing or in like the British press at the time, because it involved a lot of celebrity authors, and it was also a talent agency, so there were like actors and directors and their agents, and basically they all simultaneously resigned one day because they didn't agree with the new management that had just kind of taken over the company. And that's how they founded a new agency called United Agents. And it was, yeah, quite an experience to be caught up in all of that. But it turned out to be one of the best experiences I've ever had, because they wanted me to come along with them, fortunately. So I was part of this really exciting and like a founding member of a really phenomenal new agency that started in a very big way, because there were so many agents. I mean, there were like 100 agents and like kind of assistants combined that set up this company, and all their clients, which basically represented, I mean, some of the best of mostly British literature, theater, film. So, and that was a really amazing way to kind of enter London as an American, like without, I actually didn't know. I mean, I knew some British editors professionally because I'd been sort of submitting books from my previous companies in the US to them. But yeah, it really changed my life in lots of ways to live there and work in that kind of a place. And I guess I thought that because it was such a big company, because I loved my job and my colleagues so much and really loved living in London, that it would be the place that I would just stay until I retired someday. And some of the agents that who were my colleagues were sort of legends in their field, like Carolyn Donny, who discovered Alain de Botton, and she actually was Richard Dawkins's like very first agent, and Nick Hornby, and Pat Kavanaugh was a phenomenal agent, who sadly passed away actually kind of during this whole time of setting up United Agents. But I feel really lucky that I got to know her and represent some of her writers internationally as well. And yet what happened was, I mean, I was there for 7 years. So really, yeah, I got the foreign rights operation sort of running and thriving, and had some incredible writers that I worked with for their translation rights representation. Most notably, well, I know there were so many notable ones, but a personal favorite was Eleanor Catton, who was, she's represented by Carolyn Donny, and she is still the youngest ever writer to win the Booker Prize, for the longest ever novel to have won the Booker Prize, which was The Luminaries in, oh gosh, was it 2014, 20, maybe just before that, 2012 or 2013, around there. And but also at about that time, I was just starting to feel like I was hitting a kind of wall in my work, and like just because I was working in such an exciting place that was growing in exciting ways, I started to feel like I wasn't actually, I don't know, able to grow much more myself, or there was, it just felt like I was, I don't know, kind of in a box, and that I think it was also, I mean, there've been a lot of sort of changes in the foreign rights trade, like over this period of, I mean, it was just becoming kind of less fun and buzzy to do that work entirely. And I was also, the volume was increasing because the company was growing. And so it was like, yeah, I was just losing that kind of fundamental connection with the love of reading, with the love of like discovering and sending out new projects as a foreign rights agent. And so yeah, it was kind of my coping mechanism was to start just kind of on the side representing some projects of my own, or some authors that had, I don't know, I'd come in touch with one way or another who I wanted to see if I could take forward. And so that's when I actually did connect with my very first clients as a primary agent. And that was Jack Chang, who's a rising star in middle grade fiction now, but back then he actually had, there was no real idea that he was going to be a middle grade writer. He was just an interesting writer who I found, it was when Kickstarter was just starting to kind of become a thing. And I used to subscribe to the newsletters just out of curiosity to see like what sorts of projects, not even expecting, people weren't really putting books out on there at that point. It was more like, I don't know, architectural projects or like toys or like films or that sort of thing. But I think Jack's was the first time I saw a book being kind of pitched in that way. And then we got to meet and I fell in love with his book. And then, yeah, there's a lot more to say about about that journey. But anyways, it was also when I first connected with Chigotsi Obioma, who was like my first literary novelist client, also first African writer that I started representing as a primary agent. And so I realized that was what I wanted to keep doing more and more of. But the company wasn't really interested in having me grow in that way. They basically wanted me to just to keep managing foreign rights. And so that's when I had the chance to move to Barcelona and work for a literary agency there. It had just kind of come up at this time that I was feeling at a crossroads in London. And it feels amazing now that I had that chance, because I'm really glad that, I don't know, that I was able to move to Spain. And I mean, I had no idea that like Brexit was around the corner at the time I made that decision, but in hindsight, I'm really glad that I'm, yeah, because I always wanted to be kind of more of a European, and so now I am. Maybe I feel I've taken up far too long.
Oh, no! I love long.
My
I'm going to get information I'm just not clever enough to ask about. So that saves me time. Esteemed audience learns more than they would have otherwise. Everybody wins with a long answer. You did say a few different things that I wanted to follow up in there, though it just struck me that a farm in Spain at the start of 2020, that's the place to be.
Yeah, I feel lucky about that as well.
And away from the crowd.
Yeah, it has been a really big change that I'm still, I think, because it's been such a busy time, I'm still processing like what it means. Um, I mean, the big change while I was living in Barcelona that I made and was like leaving the agency that I had started working for there, or that had brought me to live in Spain, and starting my own business, Craig Literary, and making that kind of shift from being an employee my whole life basically to suddenly being self-employed, and like an entrepreneur, um, which had not ever been anything I would have, I don't know, foreseen before. But as soon as ever since I've done it, I've been happier than ever, like with my work, with my quality of life. It's harder work than ever, but it, yeah, I think I've surprised myself by well I've, how well suited I guess I am for it. And, but then the big shift of leaving urban cosmopolitan life, to moving, to, it's actually an off-grid olive farm. um, and I mean, I did grow up in the country, like in a rural part of Connecticut, so I think I've always had that in me of, you know, really loving nature and calm, quiet times. And I became a lot more, I guess, extroverted during all the years I lived in cities, from like New York to Edinburgh to London and to Barcelona. But it's actually been an easy, or very, I don't know, positive adjustment to kind of go back to nature and country life. But it does have its, yeah, it's something that I'm still, I think, getting used to. But I think because of the way the world has changed and is changing, like in the context of the pandemic and everything else, for me, it feels like kind of the only way forward, actually, to like keep feeling, I don't know, just a sense of calm, and especially in discovering new writers and like kind of developing projects from really early stage. I almost feel like I don't know how I would have been able to do it in any other like setting than than this, like during these years. It's I think I always, especially since I founded my agency, I think the gardening metaphor has been like really central to, I don't know, my philosophy of being an agent, the kinds of like way that I go about my work. And so yeah, it helps to actually be in that kind of a setting while I'm doing my work.
I know that you said that from an early age you believed yourself to be both an American and a European, and that while you're there in Spain, you're able to get over to the Frankfurt Book Fair without issue. You're able to get to the London Book Fair. You're able to get back to the States for meetings. And how much does this is a question I'm asking because the esteemed audience knows I want to decentralize publishing here in the U.S. out of New York, and spread it out more. It's amusing to me. I'm talking to you in Spain from Indiana, and our Zoom connection is flawed. I talked to Maurice Broadus not long ago, and he lives about 10 minutes drive from me. And he was there in his house, very unstable Zoom connection here in Indianapolis. I don't know why that works. But how does living abroad, does that impact you at all with your dealings with US, or does that open you up? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of being out of NYC?
Mm. Um, I think like pre 2020, I felt that much more, I guess I was much more conscious of maybe the disadvantages, or like it was, I don't want to say a level of stress or anxiety. It wasn't quite, but it was more something that I was constantly feeling like I had to overcome, like compensate for by um just, I guess. And you can't really, I mean, I also was aware that I couldn't really, um no matter how much time I would spend online, or like emailing people, or finding, like following, like, I don't know, Publishers Marketplace or whatever, to see like who was moving where, or which new editors were acquiring, like that doesn't um compensate for, I don't know, getting to see those same editors like for coffee, or just like in the same neighborhoods, even in New York or Brooklyn. Um, but I think, I mean, in the way that we've all moved our lives and work even more online since 2020, I feel like it's more of an even field in that respect. Like I don't feel like I'm at as much of a disadvantage in my ability um, to keep in touch with people, to meet new people. So, but I still think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the disadvantages, I mean, the advantages are very clear to me. I'm also very aware and grateful that I spent all the years that I did, like in New York, in London, and that I have this kind of network of relationships, or even just like the industry knowledge that I've kind of carried with me from one place to another, and continued to build up, like even from one place that I've moved to the next. But I'm sure that I would not have been able to succeed at starting up an independent like agency, especially out of Spain, for writers, many of whom are like living in the US or the UK, if I didn't have like all the experience from living in the center of things from before. But I think, yeah, I mean, on balance, I feel like the advantages now feel stronger to me than the disadvantages. But I think there are just some times where I miss, like I wish I find out that there, I don't know, about a certain event, or see like, I mean, things that are happening in New York, especially, that I realize, oh, I would have liked to be able to have attended that, or, but there's still a lot. I mean, thankfully, with everything that has had to happen online these past few years, that's been great to realize how much I actually can participate in, even by living way over here. But I think it's, I really share your desire to diversify or diversify and decentralize publishing. Um, and so it was becoming apparent to me, like, and definitely a positive thing over the past few years, especially around the time that I was deciding to start my own agency, that there were a lot of, I don't know, agents I know and respect who are moving to places other than New York. And so in that sense, I don't feel like there's, I don't know, a huge amount of difference between me being where I am and someone who's like decided to live in like Vermont or Minnesota or California. And yeah, I mean, what I miss living now in a rural area is community, I guess. Like, and I was definitely like just starting to have kind of been in Barcelona long enough to, I don't know, have a sense of community there. And now I'm about to like move to the other side of the country, so it'll be having to yeah, find or create a new community there. But one thing that it was actually one of my writers sort of drove home to me when we talked just last week was that like the agency that I've built or am building and the writers that I've brought together in this, like we're a community. Like so I love that feeling that it's a way of making up for the disadvantage of not being in a city. But I have loved like trips. I think are definitely still very important. I think in the first like couple of years of the pandemic, I was starting to feel like, oh, I guess there's no, I don't know, way to travel internationally again, maybe, or like, and I was in some ways like not mourning that as much as I think other people were, because I think actually, especially in this industry, we do need to find better ways to be sustainable, and like the just kind of perpetual like traveling is that a lot of people do is, I'm not sure that is going to be the best way forward. But I have really realized how just the experience of, I don't know, going to, like, I just went to the Bogota Book Fair in Colombia, which was a fellowship I was initially invited to kind of for 2020, but it was pushed until this year. And it was just incredible, like to, you know, just meet so many new people who are kind of advancing like the literary culture and publishing in that part of the world, and having such a sense of like, you know, shared values and purpose, and that's the best thing that you get from any trip to a book fair, or to do meetings with publishers in their offices or in their hometown. So yeah, I think it's about finding the balance of, I think I probably can get away, like travel less than in the past, but have at least, I don't know, 2 or 3 really valuable trips in the year. And that's probably enough.
Well, you a lot of things I want to follow up on. One you mentioned diversifying publishing a little bit more, and of course, our esteemed audience knows I ask every publishing professional who comes on the show about diversity in publishing. In your case, I think usually I ask, what are you doing? What is Craig Literary doing to increase diversity in market? But I think a quick scan of your client list will give us some idea of what you're doing to actively work to diversify publishing. Because you work both internationally with foreign rights as well as with domestic publishers, not domestic to us here in the States. Hello, international listeners. I never forget you. But what are you seeing a similar push abroad with internationally with European publishers, Spanish publishers, all the different types of foreign rights publishing that you work with, as well as U.S. publishing? Is this something that we need diverse books? Is that primarily a U.S. focused initiative, or are you seeing that spreading out to worldwide?
I think it's a mixed picture. And I think in a lot of ways, because I don't know, these initiatives or this kind of awareness that publishing needs to become much, much more diverse, not only in terms of the authors and the books that are published, but also the people who are the gatekeepers who work in publishing, and that's been going on for, I think, I don't know, at least probably going back to around 2010 or like 2000. It was definitely around the time that I kind of left London and moved to Barcelona that there was a sense that people were becoming increasingly aware and like active around that. But now it's been, almost a decade, and we're still, kind of seeing over and over again. You can see, great things that have come about and great changes. And in general, I would say it feels like the most exciting and inspiring time in publishing, like in my whole career, because these initiatives and just support for diverse writers was not happening at all. And when I first was starting, like in the 90s and early 2000s, but there's clearly still a really long way to go, or there's like, you keep finding different examples of things that actually haven't changed that much at all. Or I think that it's clearly mostly in the US and the UK. I think to some extent in France as well, at least in the writers that are getting published in literature. But yeah, it's kind of, I think it's really in the US and the UK that are continuing to push forward with this. And but I also saw it a lot. When I was just in Colombia, which was really inspiring, because I don't I don't see it so much in Spain, for instance. And so it was, it's great to see, because maybe that is the answer, like for, or part of the answer for, like, I don't know, country publishers in like South America, in Africa, to be doing, like, to be growing, to be kind of creating communities around books, and in their own countries, because it's also, I don't know, it's about like the global north versus the global south, and like all the centers of publishing power are in the north. And so I think if there are these sort of new channels, or like hubs of publishing growing in Africa, in South America, in Asia, then that's going to help as well. But yeah, I don't know. I have mixed mixed views about the extent to which the industry is really promoting diversity. What can I ask you, like, what your perspective on that is?
Well, I agree with you. I think it's better than it certainly has been, which is good. I think it could continue to improve. I continue to hear absolutely unacceptable stories, many of them off the record, from guests on the show or people I've met in real life. Really, in 2022, an editor said that, an agent said that. Really, and as soon as I know who that person is, they're not coming on this show. Like, nope. best of luck elsewhere. So it's yeah, no, I agree. I think we're improving, but there's the road leads ever onward, and there's more work to be done. But the good news is there's folks out there like Jessica Craig who are actively working to continue that work. And I wanted to, I've been asking everyone about the state of publishing also, and since you're in a unique position to tell us about the state of international publishing. I know here in the US, we're getting it seems like there's always some variation of a doomsday tale. More recently, we've had some high profile associate editors leaving publishing with complaints that the pay is too low, the workload is too great. It's not sustainable. How are editors supposed to make a living within publishing? Is that primarily a US problem, or are you seeing that internationally as well?
I think it's definitely not just a US problem. I mean, just in this past week in the UK bookseller, there have been lead articles about it's the results of recent surveys about the issue of burnout in British publishing, and the issues of pay for like entry level and junior roles versus the executives at the top, and how that is so linked to there being diversity in publishing. Is if like people from anything other than privileged backgrounds are not able to earn a living, like do like with an entry level publishing salary, or the cost of living in a place like London or New York, then yeah, that's something that really needs to be solved by the big publishing companies, especially, and big agencies as well. And I think it is a problem. I think it's also an issue probably anywhere, but less so in in countries where the cost of living, or in places where the cost of living isn't as high, or where there's more of like, I don't know, a social, like where there's good public health care, for example, or like where there's more of like a social safety net, in in most European countries, then I don't think it's as stark an issue as it is in the US or UK. Yeah, but it's I don't know. I feel very like, I don't know, positive and hopeful about a lot of things to do with publishing and books, but there are a lot of I don't know, just I think warning signs about the future, that I don't think we can ignore.
So if we could just fix our here in the US and in the UK, if we could make sure we get healthcare universally available, and maybe stabilize our disparity in wealth a little bit, that would take a lot of the pressure off publishing. So some of this may be less a problem with publishing so much as it's just a problem with these capitalist exploitative systems. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, we know the solution. We'll just fix it, and then that'll be.
Yeah, I mean, I do think in terms of publishing, there's still a real issue of, I guess, yeah, inequality, but also like elitism in a way. Like, I think there's people are starting to address this or talk about it at least, but it's so hard to, I think, undo, especially if you are like living and working in like one of the centers of power, of wealth and power, like New York or London. Then you kind of you're kind of caught up in all of that as well. Or I think for too long there's been just such, I guess, a preference given to like writers who have, I don't know, come from like certain schools or like certain I guess that is where it's mostly like channeled. Like if you've gone, I don't know, I've gone to great schools, like those schools, so I know that world, or that like way of thinking very well. But I don't know, I guess I currently am more aware of the elitism that kind of goes into not just publishing, but like all kind of major, but especially in the arts, I think, and especially in like the book world, there are these just clear kind of connections between like especially in literary, I mean, in literary fiction and nonfiction, I do find, I mean, actually, we should talk about like, I guess how I kind of shifted into children's books, like after being someone who always saw herself as being an adult reader, adult agent. It's
Yes,
definitely
that's great.
it's definitely in children's books that I think we can see all these kind of previous like prejudices and like categories sort of breaking down, at least in the US and UK. And yeah, I got into children's books basically through my writers. Like I never thought it would be my area. There is such a kind of or I always perceived there to be such a kind of division between the people who work in adult publishing and the people who work in children's publishing, or the it's a different network. It's you're submitting to different editors, and it has been a learning curve for me. I don't have kids of my own, and yeah, I just sort of thought it was never going to be something that I would get into. But I'm really glad that I mean, basically, thanks to Jack Chang writing "See You in the Cosmos," which he initially didn't know he was writing a middle grade book or a book for kids. He just wrote the book that he wanted to write. But and when I first read that manuscript, I think I initially did show it to a couple adult fiction editors, but I did just have a sense that this book feels different from well, it was different from anything I'd ever worked on or read before. And then it ended up working really well as a middle grade novel. And that showed me that, oh, I guess I can do this after all, or I have. It's been work that I've had to do to get to know about middle grade, young adult, the market, the people. There's still a lot more reading in that area that I want to do and am doing, but it's been such a joy to kind of enter it through the writers and the projects that I've worked on over the past few years. And each time it sort of pushes I don't know, the boundary further than I thought, because I was like, okay, no, I want to do more middle grade. And I've got the basis to keep building upon that. But then I thought
See You in the Cosmos won the SCBWI Golden Guide just right out of the strong start.
Yeah.
You immediately fall in love with middle grade after an experience like that, right?
Yeah. And Jack has too. I mean, he's working on his next middle grade novel, and he's really kind of found a kind of community of writers, not only of middle grade, but writers for young readers. And so, and then because of that, I had the confidence to reach out to Zainab Mian, British Muslim writer, real trailblazer. With, I mean, she'd been writing and even illustrating her own books and self-publishing. Like, she'd started two companies in the UK when she was a biology teacher, but had two young sons at that time, and was frustrated, as many people are and should be, that there weren't any books that featured like characters that looked like her kids or her. And so she started writing them and publishing them herself. And then I found her when she actually won this great prize. It's a pretty recent prize in the UK called the Little Rebels Prize. But she it was actually when she was on the short list for that. That was the first time I saw her name, but it was kind of amazing because she was on a short list of, like, Malala was on that same short list, and these other like kind of well-known British children's book writers who were all published by major publishers. And then there was Zainab Mian with her self-published book that was then called The Muslims. But yeah, I'm so glad that I reached out to her at that moment, and we connected really well. And then her book, The Muslims, has grown into what's now a 5-book series called Planet Omar, published by Hodder and the Hachette Children's Group in the UK, and Putnam Children's in the US. And that's doing well in like Dutch and German and Italian. And so yeah, having these projects that just kind of spoke to me, and these writers, yeah, they're the ones who kind of guided me into this world of children's publishing. And then I always felt like, okay, well, I can see what, like, how middle grade, or like basically books that are sort of similar to novels but for young readers, are speaking to me. But I can't believe there's no way I'm ever going to do a picture book. and then because that is so different still from middle grade and YA publishing, and the people are also very different. But then this project actually came up right at the start of the pandemic, which was, it was just published in March of this year, called Lou Jane Dreams of Sunflowers. And it's a gorgeous picture book that shares not so much the biography. I mean, it's a really fascinating project because and I think this is one reason that I was immediately so captivated by it, is because I like books that just kind of push the definitions of what kind of book it is, or like, and so this book is this special kind of way of sharing a real life human rights defender, like Shiro's story, but through basically a fantasy kind of fable story that's very imaginative, and is sort of inspired by imagining what the real Lou Jane Halflewell was like as a young girl before she became an activist. She was one of the leaders of ending the ban against women driving in Saudi Arabia, and also the male guardianship system. And she was one of these activists that was punished most severely for just her activism. And it's because her siblings all live outside of Saudi Arabia, they've been able to speak out about what has happened to her and also other Saudi activists. And it's her younger sister who's the co-writer of this book, with the woman who really built the international campaign to free the Saudi women who were imprisoned even after MBS lifted the driving ban. He then put the women who'd been kind of campaigning for that, in prison, and took credit himself for having done this thing. And so it's just, it's been really an incredible experience, like shepherding a book like this into the children's book world. I think it's possibly the first, and it is inspired by like Malala's Magic Pencil, I think is maybe the only other sort of close example, but it's still to share the story like for such young readers of a real life human rights defender whose case was actually, I mean, there was a lot of uncertainty. I mean, she was in prison during the whole time that the book was being written and kind of presented to publishers. And we're so grateful that I think we found the perfect publisher, which was Maria Russo of Mine Edition, part of Astra Books for Young Readers. And then they matched it with Rebecca Green as the illustrator, who actually had been friends with, or she still is friends with one of the co-writers, with Uma Mishra Newberry, the co-writer. So I'm not sure I want to do a lot more with picture books, although because it's such a different area, but now because of this one, I definitely do want to and will keep doing more with picture books, because how could I stop when I've met such wonderful people through this, and it's been such a really impactful experience. So yeah, I guess the lesson is never say never say never.
Something you mentioned much earlier in the conversation that I made a mental note to get back to is you'd mentioned for a brief time you worried you might be losing your love of reading. And I thought, oh no, that must be like almost the equivalent of if you're a minister and have been for 20, 30 years, however long, and you're well established in your career and suddenly you become an atheist. Oh no, if you lose your love of reading, what are you going to do? And I know you are a big proponent of reading at least one book for pleasure at all times while you're reading your submissions and everything else. Does working on discovering new things like picture books, like middle grade books, does that help to renew your love of reading? And where is your relationship with reading at this point?
Yeah. It's actually at a kind of hard spot. Like just this year, there's been something about like 2022 that has been hard to keep up the pleasure reading. But I think that's just because I've been so busy, or because so many of my clients kind of buckled down and like progressed in like writing new drafts or new manuscripts like during this pandemic time, that I've had a sort of steady flood of of works from my writers to be reading this year. But it's I definitely think working in kids' books, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm really discovering I love about it, is it does kind of reignite that kind of early passion for reading, and just, and also like the books are much shorter, so it's easier to like read middle grade or even YA, and certainly picture books for pleasure, than it is to read like all the, I know, novels and nonfiction too that I want to be reading. But I mean, I think the biggest difference for me, like that's one of the joys of having gone out on my own, because I think it was much harder when I was kind of servicing other people's clients, or like working like as a foreign rights agent, and having to kind of read, I don't know, across, especially a company as big as United Agents. I only had time to read maybe one or two novels for pleasure like in a year, and I felt as soon as I got like firmly into primary agenting, and then especially when I set up on my own, that there just felt like such a, it had been years since I had really I mean, I guess on I don't know, on holidays I would always take like read maybe one book, but I really made an effort to just make the time to be reading something all through the year, and it's made me just feel so much, I guess, sharper, and just have that sense that my love of reading has, that I've returned to it, like from almost like before the time when I first got into the business. And I mean, I think that's something everyone in publishing kind of struggles with the most, is we all kind of grew up like loving reading. That's why we have these careers. But then, to be working in an area where you're required to read so much, and pretty much, and after hour, like that's part of the issue with like burnout with sort of people in more on the publishing side than the agency side, I think. But it's not like editors are able to be like reading kind of at their desks or like during most working days. It's what you have to fit in like after hours or on weekends. And but I feel like I have, I guess, a bit more flexibility about I mean, my clients' work comes first, but then there's always something. And especially over the summer, I guess that's when I kind of spend a lot more time reading than other times of the year.
Well, how I know you've got right around 30 some odd clients now. How actively are you seeking new clients?
I'm always, I think at the moment I'm feeling just, it's harder. I mean, I guess I've signed up a few new this year, like in the first months of this year. And I'm always seeking. I mean, there's, I don't know, a couple of people that I just asked to see samples from just this week. I think I am reaching a point where, because initially when I first started my agency, I think I had 6 writers, and now I have like, I don't know, almost 36 probably. But and I know that's what, like, the agents at like the big agencies can take on a lot more clients. I mean, I think some of my former colleagues at United Agents have like, I don't know, maybe 100 clients. And but since I do everything myself, I mean, I have recently started teaming up with an agency in London to handle my translation rights, which is feeling really good, because I mean, it's never something I'm going to completely turn my back on, or I feel like there always is some, like, because of my I mean, that's what my career was until recently, that I still have a lot to contribute. But to just, yeah, have somebody I trust who is excited about my books, or my clients' books, and able to have that be their kind of full-time work. Whereas what I've discovered is like getting new writers kind of through the doors of publishing houses in the US and or the UK, ideally both, is that's that takes up like I mean, I try to keep up some of my closest relationships and like, you know, with publisher editors in Germany or France or other European countries especially. But it's there's so much change to always keep up with in North America and in the UK. So, but that said, yeah, I think it's mostly just trying to keep a sort of, I love having an eclectic list. And so it's a matter of like trying to keep doing different kinds of projects that do all sort of connect in some way to like my own taste and passions and experience. But yeah, that does make me more, I guess, because I'm glad, like, I wouldn't want to just be doing, I don't know, entirely literary fiction, for example. Or I like being somebody, I actually really like it when like my writers are like able, like some writers are able to do more than one kind of book, like whether fiction or nonfiction, or write for kids as well. And I really enjoy, and I'm kind of proud to be an agent that can encompass that, like without, you know, them having to go off to work with somebody else for a kid's book or a nonfiction book. So yeah, I'm open, but I'm also I can be very slow to respond because it's just me. But eventually, I mean, I would like to, I don't know, at least get an assistant or have, and maybe that will give me the capacity to expand a bit more. But
well, should we put out the call? Should anybody who's ever always wanted to be an intern or an assistant for a literary agency at least maybe drop you an email? Early for that.
I think it's a little early, but it's something that, yeah. I mean, ideally, I think it would be good to have somebody in nearly the same time zone that I'm in. So probably so that might be someone who's based in the UK or Europe. But Eastern, I don't know. I actually tend to work, like match my working hours to Eastern US as much as possible.
Well, if esteemed audience were to keep an eye on Craig Literary, then
Mm.
if you are at that stage, you're going to post something there that they'll see that's what you're looking for, and they'll know it's time to send you their resume.
Mm. Yeah, I think my move of house like has to happen before anything else, and then once I'm settled in what is intended to be like, the last big move, then that would be the good time to be starting to look for an assistant. So.
Well, did want to ask you, I'm watching our time, and you've been extremely generous with your time, and I greatly appreciate it. So I've only got a couple more questions for you today, and we'll end this thing while we're still having fun. But I did ask a little bit about literary question. I like to give the opportunity to every agent that comes on here, because one reason esteemed audience is listening to us is to get some sense of why Craig Literary, of all the agencies to choose from, why would this be the best for me? And so that's my question. What are the advantages of working with Craig Literary? What can all the authors who are already sending queries to you look forward to once they've been accepted?
Oh gosh, that's a really tough question. I mean, I think it's mostly about deciding whether you want like an independent or like boutique kind of model of agent, or one of the like big companies. And I think there are advantages and disadvantages to both. I think the advantages of an agent like me is that I don't know. I think of myself as and I think all like we are much more. I think you would get more personal attention because obviously there's nobody else to respond to the emails, or in my case. But it's also about I don't know. I feel it's a slightly different like philosophy of the process of like of a book's journey. Like, I mean, it's, and I guess I kind of work in a very sort of bespoke way, like depending on like every author is different, every book is different. And so, but yeah, it's about kind of growing out of that, like kind of fundamental, like spark from the beginning. And it, I mean, I think I am really unique from other agents because of my international like background and location, and I think that is something that I don't know, some writers or aspiring writers are drawn to more than others. I feel like really actually lucky and sort of, I mean, when I first set up Craig Literary, I worried a bit like, am I gonna, I don't know, get any interesting submissions or queries at all? Like, or will they all just like, how will people know about me? Or like, will and it actually has been really gratifying to see that I mean, there's never really been any shortage, especially when I first set up the agency. There's that initial kind of, I mean, once you're, I guess, listed as a new company in Publishers Weekly or Publishers Marketplace, then people submit more than ever. But it's yeah, I think it's pretty apparent like what makes me different from the, I guess, usual agent that's based in New York or in London. And I think it's been really wonderful to, I mean, that the authors that, especially those that I've been working with since I actually was in London, of those who have stayed with me, have not, I don't know, I don't think seen any difference in, or that it's because they wanted to work with me and it didn't matter to them like whether I was in London or an off-grid olive farm in Spain. And so yeah, I'm not sure if that really answered the question, but
I think it does. I think that the student audience knows that they're going to get to work with Jessica Craig, and it's more or less enough said.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally I do get, I get query. I mean, I know a lot of authors like send out queries simultaneously to various agents, and that's fine. And there have been times where I've, you know, made a play for somebody who I knew was like, had an offer from somebody in New York or was approaching agencies there. And I guess I'd prefer not to be in those kinds of situations because I don't know, I sort of feel like it's, but and it's inevitable that I will be, and I actually think it's a healthy thing for authors like to be, I mean, it's like when I'm submitting a work to publishers, usually I'm submitting it to more than one publisher.
It just takes so long to hear back. It's not realistic to wait 3 months every time.
I completely agree.
Well, unfortunately. Jessica Craig, have you ever seen a ghost and or a flying saucer?
I am very, I think I've become increasingly like sort of rational or science based like over the years, but whereas but okay, definitely not a flying saucer. It's possible I've seen a ghost, but
can you share any details with me?
No, I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes I have very vivid dreams, like I have ever since I was a child, and there have been, I don't know, one or two standout dreams where I could believe that there was something else going on there, but I don't know. I'm not gonna.
The things where if it's not practical, you don't have the absolute proof on it. You just gotta put it in this category of maybe yes, maybe no, and that's it's not a great practical use throughout the day.
Yeah.
Like, I 100% believe in flying saucers, but does it come up every day? No. Is it useful to on a regular basis? No, not really. One of those things. We'll put that over there, but we've got to do this today. Let's focus on.
I'd love to represent a really good ghost story. Actually, I that has not happened. I don't think I've ever represented a ghost story. Anyways,
you just perked right up at that. I mean, were you looking for more of a literary type ghost story, or what would maybe hope to catch your interest?
Well, it would have to be really good writing. I mean, I think it could be Yeah, probably more to the literary side, but it could be, yeah, in the young readers area or adult. Yeah. And I haven't done any, like, horror is not really a thing that I have done yet. Um, but I could be, I mean, I'm interested. I do like, I like some speculative fiction, or like, and that certainly could have ghosts in it. So yeah.
Jack Tang, if you're listening, number one, please come on the show. We'd love to have you. But
Oh, that would be great. I'll tell him.
That seems like that's going to be the secret, that now you'll Jack Chang got you into the middle grade, and now he'll be the gateway into horror.
No, I don't think so.
Or some other.
Maybe somebody else will.
Which is, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I so appreciate your generosity in making time for us. For today, my last question for you is always some variation of, if you could offer one or two or however many bits of advice you like that might make a significant difference for all of the writers who are watching or listening to us now, what would you tell them?
Wow. I think just be true to your vision and your craft. I mean, if you have a vision that where there's a gap between, I don't know, the craft that you've learned and achieving that vision, then hone up on the like, find ways to strengthen the craft. But I think in these just incredibly noisy, kind of intense times that that we're in, like, it's more important than ever to, yeah, keep the space, like your creative space, and not be I don't know, tripped up by doubting whether, like, I don't know, your book is going to have any relevance, or whether books at all, like, have any relevance, or I mean, I think if you've, yeah, if there's something that you're really, you know, passionate about, and have the skill to pull off, then don't let go of it, or don't lose, like, sight of it. I mean, there's probably, it might not be me that responds, like, to it, as but there probably is someone out there. I mean, there are, yeah, I mean, fortunately, there seem to be more people entering publishing as agents, as independent publishers, as editors, than I've ever seen before. So yeah.
There are more people entering agenting and publishing now than ever before. Why do you think that is? It's a sneaky follow-up question.
Well, I think it has to do with the diversification, like, of publishing, especially in the US and the UK, but I think in other countries as well. There are agents where there never were agents before. I mean, like in South America, for example, or but I think it's also it's easy, like, I don't know, I think I've been reading articles lately that give the impression that like, oh, agenting is the easy thing to do, or like if you, I don't know, haven't made it in, or if you've lost like your job or your like quality of life in like corporate publishing, then just shift over to becoming an agent. Or and it is very easy to set up as an agent, like anybody can. You don't need, I don't know, a special degree, or you don't even need that much, like there's hardly any overhead, I mean, compared to if you were wanting to start a publishing house, for example. But it's not an easy, like, I don't know, there's no really easy formulas for succeeding at it, I guess, aside from working really hard. And but on the plus side, I think there are more agents and agencies out there than well, than I've ever been before. In more different parts of the country. Like they're not all in kind of New York or the like tri-state area anymore. They're so yeah.
That's wonderful news for writers, which is the perfect note to end on. Love wonderful news for writers. Where can esteemed audience find you online, follow you on social media, and all that stuff?
I'm on my website is craigliterary.com. I'm on Twitter for the time being at Craig Literary. Just keeping an eye on how things are going to evolve there. But and then I actually was on Instagram as at Craig Literary, and Instagram like deleted my or disabled my account for some like fine print reason that no, they just don't explain. But yeah, you can best find me through my website or Twitter.
And you can find me on Twitter, always, esteemed audience. Even as it becomes more and more of a hell site, I'll still be on there to tell you who's on the show.
Oh, yeah, if you and other good people stay, I'll stick around.
No, that's all I do is I just toss up a link and then I run away. Like, would you like to have a discussion that devolves into an online argument with strangers? Nope. I've got books to write. No, thank you. But here's a link to the show. For more interviews with literary agents, almost as good as this one, for interviews with authors, editors, all the world's best people, head to middlegreatninja.com. Download your free copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. It will change your life. And God willing, I'm alive. I'll see you next week.